Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I am Tom, and today we're talking about culture. And one thing about culture is food. And if you want to explore the culture of another country when you're traveling, the best way to do that is to go out and eat. But unfortunately, sometimes there is this thing called tipping. Once you're done with your meal, then you're expected to leave a tip on the table, a little extra money for the person who waited on you. And some countries have this tradition. Some of them don't. However, before you travel, you should know where tipping is expected so you won't make your fellow compatriots look bad.
Yeah, your compatriot, of course, is another citizen from your country. So if you're traveling abroad and you don't tip, and say you're Taiwanese, when you leave, of course, the waiter will say, oh, those Taiwanese, they're so cheap. So you don't want to make your own country look bad. So, yeah, it's pretty important to know whether you need to tip or not.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's get to it here. It's our unit on tipping. The question is to tip or not to tip. Here's our lesson read from top to bottom.
Imagine dining at a fine restaurant on your dream vacation. After finishing a delicious meal, you contentedly call for the check and pay with your credit card. Nevertheless, as you leave the restaurant, you're confronted with an angry face. It's your waitress. Visibly upset, she asks if there was something wrong with your meal. Suddenly, you realize your mistake. You forgot to leave a tip. Every year, travelers experience embarrassing moments like this because they're unaware of tipping customs. Yet who can blame them, since tipping culture varies greatly from country to country. In places such as Taiwan, Australia, and France, tipping isn't expected. A gratuity charge is often factored into the check, so customers simply pay the total amount. This strategy won't work in the U.S., though. Once you get your bill, you are accountable for calculating the appropriate tip to leave for your server. A 15 to 20% tip is considered standard, and you should always leave at least 10%. This is because American restaurants usually don't add a service charge. In addition, servers are usually paid a small salary that is below minimum wage. Thus, stiffing your waitress on a tip is considered rude. If you try to leave a tip in Japan, however, your server might feel humiliated for a different reason. In Japanese culture, providing good service is regarded as a basic job responsibility that shouldn't be rewarded. Before you travel overseas, it pays to do some quick research on tipping customs in the place you're planning to visit. If you've forgotten this step, you can try asking locals a proper etiquette before paying your bill. As long as you follow these simple tips on tipping, not only will you save face, but you'll see your server smile in delight when you hand back the check.
Okay, let's talk about today's lesson. The title again is to tip or not to tip. That, of course, is borrowing from to be or not to be. That is the question from Hamlet. I don't think Hamlet had to debate whether he was going to tip or not. I don't think they had tipping back then. And last time I read Hamlet, I don't think he went out for dinner during that entire play. But in any case here, yes?
Hamlet was royalty.
True, yes, except his father was killed or something, and his brother-in-law took over or something. But that's a whole different story. But we're asking this question here. Should we leave a tip or should we not leave a tip? Here you have to imagine that you're dining at a fine restaurant on your dream vacation. Maybe your dream vacation was to go to Halifax, Nova Scotia or something like that. Or maybe to Denver, Colorado. Who knows? And you're at a fine restaurant in one of those places. And after finishing a delicious meal, you contentedly call for the check and pay with your credit card. Contentedly here is an adverb. It's related to the word content, which is an adjective. That means you're satisfied, you're happy, you're not complaining at all. You want to be content in life, of course. A lot of people strive to be happy in life. Other people strive to just be content. That's fine. I just want to be content. I don't want to be really mad or sad or things like that. So you're content here. You're satisfied. So, hey, can I have the check, please? You could also call it the bill. Could I have the bill? And then you're going to pay with plastic. You're going to pay with your credit card.
We're going to continue on in this scenario, this situation that a writer has written about. It says, nevertheless, as you leave the restaurant, you're confronted with an angry face. If someone confronts you, they walk right up to you and they have something they want to say to your face. Well, you're confronted with an angry face. It's your waitress. Or waiter. You might have a waiter. At some of the really fine dining restaurants, they only hire men, which is interesting. Now, visibly upset. If something's visible to you, it means you can see it. You don't have to guess. You don't even have to listen to what they have to say. You can see on their face that they're really upset. And she's upset and asks if there was something wrong with your meal. You know, and that's why people don't leave a tip in America. There has to be some reason why they don't. Maybe they didn't like the attitude of the waiter or waitress. Maybe they were rude, or they forgot something, or the food wasn't cooked right, or you had to ask for a fork 5 times, things like that. But even if the service is really bad, I always leave 10% because I know that they're not being paid a lot of money per hour. Now, suddenly you realize your dumb mistake. You forgot to leave a tip.
Yes, indeed. And I'm trying to imagine here, I don't think the waitress or the waiter would actually come up to you and say, hey, how come you didn't leave me a tip? Or was there something wrong with the food? I think for the most part, they just kind of leave you alone and thought, okay, you didn't give me a tip. Okay, whatever. But in any case here, this may be something that you should remember to do in the future. Yeah, like Stephanie here, if the service is really bad, you still try to leave them at least something. And a tip also doesn't mean that you're going to leave like a little bit of advice on the table. It's a good idea to invest in the XYZ Corporation. That's my tip for today. Now, that's a different kind of tip. Here we're talking about a little bit of money. Now, moving on now to the next paragraph, it says, every year, travelers experience embarrassing moments like this because they're unaware of tipping customs. So this is an embarrassing situation. It is something that makes you feel embarrassed. Oh, this is so embarrassing. I forgot to leave a tip. I am so embarrassed.
Yeah, it can be embarrassing, really. But usually, smart travelers, at least, they know to look ahead at some of the customs in the countries they're going to. So they avoid situations where they're embarrassed. Now, it says in the next sentence, yet who can blame them since tipping culture varies greatly from country to country? It really does. Even in the same country, it can vary. I found that in New York City, I had to tip for everything. Even if someone came to my house to paint the walls, I had to tip them. It was crazy. Everything was tip, tip, tip. I felt like it was so expensive. Well, if you blame someone for something, you look at them and say, hey, it's your fault. This is wrong, or this went wrong, or it's your fault that you served me the wrong dish. You weren't listening to me when I was placing my order. So if you blame someone, you're saying you're unhappy and it's their fault.
Yes, don't blame me. It's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. But yes, who can blame them? You can't blame them. You can't fault them because tipping culture varies from country to country. You need to do your research. Now, here in Taiwan or places such as Taiwan, Australia, and France, tipping isn't expected, so you don't have to do it. And of course, visitors to Taiwan are very happy when they find out about this. They don't have to leave a tip, and food here is relatively inexpensive anyway. A gratuity charge is often factored into the check, so customers simply pay the total amount. A lot of times that is called a service charge. Here we're calling it a gratuity charge. Gratuity is just a fancy way of saying a tip.
Yeah.
A little bit of extra money you receive because you like the service or something like that. And also we have the phrase to factor with the preposition into, to factor into, which means it's been included, it's part of the total price.
Yeah. You can also factor some sort of information into a project or a decision you're making. It just means you consider it. You include it. It's something you don't forget. Yeah, a lot of times, even in Taiwan, there are restaurants who have already factored the gratuity into the check, like some of these foreign restaurants like TGIF and Chili's, places like that. They've already got the gratuity factored in, so all you have to do is pay the total amount.
My understanding, though, is that service charge goes into the boss's pocket and none of it is actually shared with the waiters or waitresses. That's what I was told.
That's too bad.
Don't quote me on that because I'm not 100% sure. But in any case here, the gratuity charge is included in the price, and so you just pay what it says on the check. That brings us to the midway point in today's lesson. We're going to take a time out right now. Oh, I'm so exhausted. We need to listen to our Chinese teacher now so I can get a little bit of a nap.
Hello everyone, my name is Tina. 我们来看一下第一个空格的句子提到呢，当你离开餐厅的时候 You're blank one with an angry face. It's your waitress. 为什么离开餐厅你却看到这个女服务生生气的脸呢？在英文里面呢，我们讲到 be confronted with 就是有面临面对的意思，所以搭配文意第一题的标准答案我们可以选择 D 选项的 confronted. Visibly blank 2, she asks if there was something wrong with your meal. 原来你没给人家小费，很明显的对方怎么样，他就问你是不是你的餐食有什么问题呢？当然前面讲到 angry 搭配这样的文意看得出来这个女服务生很生气，所以我们就可以选择 G 选项的 upset。 在这里呢用 VPP 来表示呢过去分词，是一种形容的作用，表示他非常的苦恼跟生气。第二段的第一句提到Every year, travelers experience embarrassing moments like this because they are blank 3 of tipping customs. 其实常常到各处去旅游，这些旅客都会体验到这样子的尴尬时刻，正因为他们没有怎么样这样子的一个习俗，所以如果你不知道或没有意识到这种给小费的习俗，就很容易出糗咯。所以搭配文意第三题，我们可以选择 A 选项的 unaware。Be unaware of something 就是不知道，没有意识到的意思。Yet, who can blame them? Blank 4, tipping culture varies greatly from country to country. 但是这又能怪他们吗？然后怎么样的连接词？后面提到这个给小费的文化，事实上每一个国家都不太一样的。为什么没有办法责怪他们？因为这些文化的不同，所以搭配文意第四题，我们可以选择 I 选项的 since， 在这里就有连接词，解释成为因为的意思。
We're going to take a quick break while Tom is napping. And then we'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue talking about tipping. Should we tip or should we not tip? Well, as we said, it kind of depends on where you are. So remember, in Taiwan, in Australia, and France, tipping isn't inspected. The tipping charge or the gratuity charge is already factored into the check. You just pay the amount. But this strategy won't work in the U.S., though. A strategy is a plan of action, or it's a policy. Of course, if you want to, say, expand your business overseas and you want to start selling your product or services in overseas markets, you need to have a plan. You need to have a strategy, what you're going to do first, what you're going to do second, etc., etc. It can be quite complicated.
So once you get your bill, you're accountable, you're responsible. It's your duty, your job. we can use those words to substitute for this, to be accountable for something. You have to calculate the appropriate tip to leave for your server. So once this happens, and then the next action that follows is that you then take that bill once you get it, and you figure out, you have to do some math, guys. Got to do some math. Got to calculate the right or the correct or the appropriate tip to leave for your server. Now, if I really like my server, I give him a big tip. I tend to go to Texas Roadhouse on Thursdays.
Where's that?
It's down by a client that I teach in the evening. It's down by A+. It's down by the New Breeze, down there by
in the City Hall area.
Songjiluko.
Okay.
And I just love the young waiters and waitresses, and
they're handsome, aren't they?
They're just young and fun, and I give them a big tip because I love the steaks there.
Ooh,
anyway,
you're starting a bad precedent. I don't like leaving tips in Taiwan.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but you know what? It's a foreign restaurant, and they're kind of used to it.
Okay.
Now, to calculate means you actually do some math. You figure it out. So you're looking at the bills total, and you try to figure out, okay, what's 10%, what's 15%? 15% is probably the average amount of the tip to leave. But nowadays, I'm hearing people expect 20 in the United States.
Yeah, actually, I figured out an easy way to do it. I'm not that good at math, but I'm pretty sure I can figure out 10% pretty fast.
Yeah.
So if the bill is like $35, then 10% of that is $3.50. Yeah. And then just double that, you've got $7, and that's 20%. So your tip should be somewhere between those two. $7 would be good if you like the service. And
I just realized why so many people go out to eat in Taiwan versus America. It's because it costs a fortune to go out to eat in America because
it does.
You have to pay that tip. Yeah.
You do. But I remember we had a good strategy the last time we were there in the States. Just order to go and eat it in the car.
Yeah.
Especially if you're traveling or something. But if you want to have a fancy meal and entertain people,
gotta pay the money.
You are going to have to leave a tip. And yes, indeed, the standard is between 15 and 20, but leave at least 10. Now, this is because American restaurants usually don't add a service charge.
Unless you go in a big group, and then it's automatic 20%.
Okay, fair enough. Somebody's going to get
10 or more.
10 or more, okay. Somebody's going to foot the bill for that if you're in a big group. And so, in addition, servers are usually paid a small salary that is below minimum wage. Yes, I remember when I worked in a restaurant, I was a chef, and we got minimum wage, which is the lowest amount you can receive according to law, minimum, the smallest. And the wait staff were making less than we did, like half of our hourly pay, but they always got more in tips than we did. So I thought that being a chef was kind of a raw deal. I should have been a waiter, could have made more money that way.
If you're a really, really good waiter, you can make some good money, especially if you're a pretty girl or a handsome guy.
Sure. And you know how to push the right buttons, and don't try too hard, because if you try too hard, then they don't tip you as well. I've known some people who had that problem. But in any case here, yes, they receive less than minimum wage.
Yeah.
And thus, or therefore, stiffing your waitress on a tip is considered rude. Yes, here's the verb to stiff. That means you just don't leave a tip.
That's right. You walk away and you don't pay that tip that most of them are expecting to get. And they need it actually to live because they're not even making minimum wage. I've heard of some restaurants, though, in the States that are abandoning this policy and they're just paying their waiters and waitresses more money. And they're saying, please don't tip at our restaurant. Now, if you try to leave a tip in Japan, however, your server, that's another term to call your waiter or waitress, they might actually feel humiliated. They might feel 丢脸 or lose a face because, hey, it's expected that they provide very good service. That's just a basic job responsibility that they feel that they should be providing. They shouldn't have to be paid extra to do a good job and to, provide really good service. So they feel like that shouldn't be rewarded. I like that. And I had to remember not to pay a tip in Japan. I tried very hard because they take it very seriously.
They might be insulted, actually.
Yeah.
As if you think they were really bad and they need some extra money to compensate for their horrible service.
Yeah, so you don't want them to feel humiliated. You want them to feel good about the work they're doing. If you have a responsibility, it just means some sort of duty, some sort of work that you must do, that you're expected to do. Most of us have responsibilities growing up. Maybe you have to do your homework. Or for me, I had to help with the household chores, like do the dishes and help around the house.
Those were your responsibilities. And so, yes, indeed, if you go to Japan, I guess you don't need to leave a tip. But if you go to the U.S., you do need to leave a tip. I'd like to know what the expected tips are in Canada. They're right next to America. Maybe they have similar customs.
It's similar.
But, yeah, you can go online, and do research. That's what the internet is for before you travel. But, hey, before you travel overseas, before you leave Taiwan and go to a country overseas, it pays to do some quick research on tipping customs in the place you're planning to visit. It pays. It's beneficial for you to do that research. And it's not only good for yourself, but also it will be good for people who follow in your footsteps. You don't want to give your country a bad reputation. People who travel after you might get bad service because you didn't tip your waiter properly when you were in Dallas.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that humiliated is very similar to feeling embarrassed, except that you really feel ashamed and foolish because someone has really questioned your dignity, your self-respect. They haven't given you that, especially in public. You can feel humiliated. No one wants to feel that way. So make sure you really do your research before you travel overseas. I think that's part of the job of a traveler, a world traveler. Now, etiquette just is a word that refers to good manners in any sort of culture, whether it's an American culture or the British culture or the culture here in Taiwan. Know the proper etiquette. For example, proper etiquette as you're eating here in Taiwan is not to stick your chopsticks straight into your rice or have them sticking up on your bowl. I learned that. You need to remember those things. And as long as you can follow some very simple rules or simple tips, some hints on tipping, you can help your waiter or waitress save face. You can make others feel like people from your country know what's going on. Don't be stupid. Know how to be a good traveler. And you'll also get to see your server smile in delight when you hand back the check. Especially if you're an American, you hand back the check and you say, you're going to give them a big tip.
Indeed. And I should mention here that a lot of times tips are left on the table in the form of cash. But nowadays, of course, if you pay with a credit card or a debit card, they'll give you back the bill and there'll be a little space for you to write the amount of the tip in there.
Before you sign your name.
Before you sign your name. That's actually very convenient that way. You don't have to dig through your pockets for change and bills and stuff like that because people are using cash less and less.
Oh, and at holiday time, add a little extra money.
Yes, indeed, because they're away from their family during the holiday times. That will make them happy. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
在台湾呢，我们所有餐食的费用直接包括小费算在里面。但是第5个空格 This strategy won't blank 5 in the US though. 但是这样子的策略到了美国是怎么样的呢？后面你会看到美国是要另外付小费的，所以这样子的方法跟策略在美国是行不通的，没有办法运作的。所以第5题在助动词后面我们需要一个动词，可以选择 H 选项的 work， 也就是有行得通的意思。第6个空格在这里提到 A 15 to 20% tip is considered blank 6. 其实如果去美国的餐厅，一般来说给个 15% 或者是20%的这样的小费呢，被认为是怎么样的？其实这是一种标准合乎规格的方式，所以第6题我们可以选择 L 选项的 standard， 在这里可以当作形容词解释成为标准的。第7个空格在这里提到 Thus, stiffing your waitress on the tip is considered blank 7. 所以咯，刚刚提到，如果呢你搞不清楚状况，然后你付的呢又是没有小费，在这里我们用了 stiff 这个动词，是一种美式的用法，代表着不给小费。所以如果没有给服务生小费的话，就被认为是怎么样的呢？当然是一种很粗鲁无礼的举止。所以第7题我们可以选择 C 选项 rude， 就是有粗鲁的意思。第8个空格，当然我们讲到每一个国家的给小费文化不一样。In Japanese culture, providing good service is regarded as a basic job responsibility that shouldn't be blank aid.到了日本呢，这个呢，他们认为提供你好的服务本来就是我们工作的责任，而这样的呢是不应该被怎么样，也就是说不应该被给小费的行为来受到奖赏的。所以搭配文意我们可以选择 F 选项的 rewarded。 Reward 就是有奖励奖赏，给你好的服务本来就是应该，所以不需要给小费来奖赏他们。第9个空格 Before you travel overseas, it pays to do some quick blank 9 on tipping customs in the place you are planning to visit. 所以呢，下一次要出国旅行之前，怎么样是一件可以做的事情呢？也就是你应该要去做一些研究跟调查，看看你要去的地方他们给小费的文化跟习俗为如何。在英文里面我们说 do research on， 所以第9个的空格标准答案就可以填 K 选项的 research， 也就是有研究的意思。所以如果可以好好的研究呢，然后照这些简单的小费秘诀，你就可以达到怎么样的效果呢？在第10个空格后面的句子就写着 Not only will you save face, but you'll see your server smile in blank 10 when you hand back the check。所以不仅呢你可以为自己呢不会丢脸，而且在你付费把账单递还去给他的时候，你会看到他微笑，而且是 smile in delight， 非常欢欣喜悦的对你微笑。所以搭配文意第10题的空格答案就选择 B delight。 以上就是今天的课文讲解，谢谢收听。
Thanks for joining us, guys. We hope you learned a little bit more about tipping and some of the words we used associated with this topic. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.